You are listening to Arcane Carolinas, an exploration of the Carolinas' folklore, legends, myths, and modern weird. Each episode, we examine the historical context of our topic and aim to preserve some of the stories that help make this part of the world such a fascinating place.
Hey y'all, Michael here. Before we get to this next episode, Charlie and I wanted to take a second to say that we're thinking about everyone in upstate South Carolina and western North Carolina and northern Georgia and eastern Tennessee and everywhere else in the path of destruction. We posted a link to the American Red Cross's Hurricane Relief Fund on Facebook, and that'll be included in the show notes for this episode also. And for the rest of 2024, I'll be donating anything I get from Arcane Carolinas Volume 2 to relief efforts. It might be a drop in the bucket, but it's something that I can do to help. Also, as we'll be doing for the rest of spooky season, this episode's show notes will contain links to information on registering and voting, especially if you need to vote early or you need to vote absentee in the Carolinas. This episode is one we recorded live at Ret-Con 2024 in Cary, North Carolina. We've just gotten confirmation that we'll be back at Ret-Con in 2025, so we hope to see you there. And in the meantime, we hope all y'all are safe and stay that way. Thanks for listening.
Folklore, legends, myths, and modern weird out of the Carolinas. We also have a spin-off called Arcane Destinations where we talk about stuff that's not from the Carolinas. This doesn't even fit that. This is just, I wanted to talk about a story about video games.
For the record, this is one of the kinds of episodes where I have no idea what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
So I love this. I'm pleasantly surprised.
So welcome to Arcane Time Travel episode to a weird story from history. I'm your co-host, Charlie Mushaw.
I'm your other co-host, multi-award-winning novelist Michael G. Williams, whose boss found out this week that he's a multi-award-winning novelist. So, yeah.
Which I think speaks volumes to your boss about staying out of your business, because it's not like he's a new boss.
Yeah, no. So that's been pretty cool.
I thought it was cool.
I think it's really great. Would it work to call it Arcane Machinations?
Sure.
Okay.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I don't care. I just you can call it whatever. I just want to tell the story.
I like good names.
Because I like a good urban legend. I like a good urban legend that has terrible tragedy to affix to its origin. Not actually.
As long as it's historical tragedy, then sure, yeah.
Right.
We talked about that today.
So I'll open up with a little bit of background. It is very difficult to understate the absolute gold rush that arcades and coin-operated entertainment represented from the mid 70s into early 80s. Mm-hmm. And that continued, but that era specifically was just the golden era of arcades.
Can I interject a brief historical note?
I want you to.
Okay.
I would encourage you to.
I think it's worth noting.
You're doing it.
Yes, I am. It's worth noting that in that time period, shortly before that, was the first time that pinball arcades became legal in a lot of places.
I have a footnote about that.
Oh, never mind. All right.
No. That's a good note.
Okay, but in a lot of places, pinball arcades were treated as being gambling dens. Basically, legally, they were considered illegal.
Yeah.
And they were banned. And there were police raids on pinball arcades in New York in the 70s.
That had a lot to do with organized crime.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's got a crossover there with gay bars because the mafia was one of the few places where you could get funding for your gay bar.
We have talked about this. You need to watch The Deuce, the HBO show.
No, I haven't. We have talked about it, but we haven't.
Really have to watch that show.
Okay.
It's a good show. And I can say that live because there's no children present.
Okay.
Do not watch that show with children.
Or do if you want to have more interesting children later.
It might give them some problems. I'm going to go ahead and say that it's a little murdery against... Yeah, anyway.
I didn't define interesting.
Okay. So I'm not old enough to have experienced the initial explosion.
Okay.
I am old enough to have grown up in an era where there was still arcade cabinets everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Convenience stores, sandwich shops, a couple actual arcades that still hung on. Anywhere somebody might have a quarter, there was an arcade machine. So I have a very special love of arcade machines, and one of my hobbies is rebuilding them. They have auctions in Winston-Salem. If you don't know, you can go get an arcade cabinet for dirt cheap, and then you can haul it back to your house and work on it, and it's a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. So the level of saturation in the absence of what we'll call verifiable sources leads to
folklore.
The folklore during this era was plentiful. I remember sitting at the lunch table and hearing that there was a code in Mortal Kombat which would make all the characters naked.
Really?
Yes. I remember that urban legend.
Watch me reveal my naivete. Was that true?
No, that was not true.
Okay. I was willing to consider it.
But yeah, so there was the whole thing, oh, my uncle works at Nintendo.
Yeah, oh yeah, totally, yeah.
Mario 12 is coming out next month, and it's already up to 13 in Japan. Yeah. Meanwhile, like all that crap. So video game rumors proliferated throughout the 80s and 90s. And I would say that this phenomena led to probably one of the biggest legends, so big that it was included in season 1 of the Loki television series, and that is the legend of Polybius. There was a Polybius machine in the background in a scene in Loki season 1. And I'm the kind of dork that when I watch stuff, I'm half the time looking at the set more than I'm looking at what's happening. And I've done this since I was a kid, where I'd be like, that's a Storage Technologies data array. And my parents would be like, shut up, nobody cares. Storage Tech for short was the name of the company. Anyway. Point being, Polybius. It's an urban legend, and I'll be very open about that. It is an urban legend. But there is some weird truth behind the urban legend.
Okay.
That influenced its creation.
I love it.
All right, so Polybius. Who here knows about Polybius? Okay, a couple people. There's a bunch of different versions of this. The nickel version is that it was a government experiment. It was an arcade cabinet, right? And it's like an all-black, unmarked arcade cabinet. And it's a government experiment akin to, some versions have an MK Ultra mind control thing. Other legends have like a Last Starfighter, like recruitment tool for the CIA or something. But the story goes, is that this game existed. And I found a historical researcher by the name of Kat Despira that did amazing verifiable research and collected all the sources one could ever need to explore this urban legend. So full credit to her for the majority of the fact finding on this. Like, okay. I'm relaying the information, and I verified her sources, but this lady's on top of her stuff when it comes to video game history. In much the same way that you discovered that an academic had done a serious deep dive study of the folklore around the Bunny Man. Exactly. It was just like, oh, I don't really have any work here to do except throw some jokes in and see if I can tie it to something else.
Somebody's already written a book.
Right. So we'll start with the core version, the origin of the legend, which this research historian tracked down through Usenet archives. And that stated that the game Polybius appeared in several suburbs, specifically in Portland, Oregon, in November of 1981. It was described as being very similar to the game Tempest. It was allegedly created by a covert German company called Sinneslaken.
What?
Sinneslaken!
Right, okay, yeah.
That's the actual way you pronounce it.
Does that actually mean anything in German?
No, it's complete. I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
It's complete gibberish. Okay. It's nonsense.
I'm full of questions because I have literally never heard of this.
It's two words that shouldn't go together. It's nonsense.
Yeah, so it's fake English German.
Yes. But the game was an instant hit.
Oh, okay.
To the point of horrific addiction. So the game is very popular. It's in a plain black, unmarked cabinet. It features rapidly revolving kaleidoscopic puzzles with interconnected shapes and subliminal messages.
I am very disappointed if it turns out that does not exist.
That's Tempest. Have you ever played Tempest?
Yeah, but it's been so long.
It's different shapes.
Don't remember.
Each level is a different geometric shape. That's one color. I think it's blue. And then you're like a little thing that spins around the outside shooting these different colored bugs that are trying to come up. And there's like green spikes and weird symbols and everything. It's describing Tempest.
Okay.
But this game, that's why they said it's Tempest-like.
Oh. So you describe a game that everybody's seen.
Yeah. And it was supposedly able to take control of the consciousness of some players, not all, which leads to the government conspiracy of they were trying to figure out how to target different people. So players would gather around the game, form lines, fights would break out. Like physical altercations because kids were so fiending for it. The kids were not all right.
They were definitionally not all right.
The kids were not all right. Obsessed and addicted, the more impacted players suffered various side effects from playing the game that included memory loss, nightmares, paranoia, insomnia, flashing images of words and phrases in their minds. Some players quit the game completely and were able to just like cold turkey, with one supposedly going on to become an anti-video game activist.
I love that touch.
Warning people of the dangers of addictive video games.
Right.
The story, but supposedly it was really bad. Players would lose control of their thoughts and some would turn murderous.
Ooh, I like murderous video game. Okay.
Yeah, so it would turn someone into must kill, whatever subliminal message tells me to kill.
Yeah.
And a few weeks after these events started to occur, basically Men in Black showed up and started fidgeting with the game, and then they'd leave. And then they'd come back and fidget with it some more until eventually they came and just took it away and it was gone. Okay.
I love the idea that kids are supposed to be walking into an arcade and being like, why is that Man in Black over there fixing that machine? Whatever, out of my way, Man in Black. I got to play my Polybius.
Right. So there's no video of this game from that era. There's since been a lot of like fan creation, like I made Polybius, and like somebody will like program a game and call it Polybius. But there's no video from that era. There's no ROM dumps. Is anyone familiar with ROM dumps? Okay, for those that are not, a ROM dump is basically where somebody will take a game and they'll export all the data that's on the board into a file type that it can then be played like on your computer so that you can play it somewhere else. You're basically dumping the memory of the game and then feeding it into a system that emulates the cabinet so that you can play the game.
You basically pirated an arcade game.
Yeah, it's a good way. It is archival, Michael. It is not pirating. We are preserving history. We are not pirates.
Okay, how about, because
piracy.
Yeah, this is a noble cause. By the way, this is how I sold to my wife my collection of arcade games that I buy from this auction where they come home dusty and broken and I have to spend lots of time fixing them.
Okay.
I tell her, this is for history. This is for the children. All right. I am doing a public good.
I say piracy in a non-pejorative manner. So reproducing, how's that?
Yes. So that's a great story, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's an amazing urban legend. That is like lunch table perfect. Like, dude, there was this game and it controlled your thoughts and some kids killed some other kids, man. And then the government came and they took it back.
At any point in the last 4 decades, from when I was a child to today, this moment, if you said to me, there is a movie about an evil video game that the government made to control people and people will kill each other to play it, I would stop everything, including recording this podcast, to go watch it.
I don't know how to respond to that.
It's such a cool idea.
Okay, sorry. You said a movie about. I was like, so you would go play it? So my mind was, so you would go play it?
I'm not necessarily saying I wouldn't play it either, frankly, but I write horror novels. What do you want?
It would be a fun experiment to see. Anyway,
I'd want to watch a few people play it first.
Yes, I would.
That?
Yeah.
Okay.
We could have a slightly unethical experiment. I will give you $5 to go play that game.
Mad science is still science, Charlie.
Yeah, it's true. So that's a really great story, and there's little bits of truth in it.
Okay.
A Tempest-like game did appear in Portland in November of 1981. There are bills of sale by 5 former early arcade operators that have volunteered documentation from, I ran an arcade in Portland in the 80s. Yeah, we got that in. Todd Levy, specifically of Ability Games Distribution Company, serviced the area and said, yeah, the game was Tempest.
The Tempest-like game called
A Tempest-like game called Tempest. And it's not uncommon wasn't uncommon during the heyday of things, of the arcade boom. I've read a lot of books on this era because I really like it. They would test market games and they would have an unmarked cabinet and they'd wheel a game into a pub or an arcade and they'd just like check in on it. And there'd be like play counters on it and stuff. So they could be like, all right, well, all of them have play counters, but they could tell, oh, this game's popular, or this works, or this doesn't work, or like stress testing the machine. So it's also conceivable that it might not have arrived in the full Art Deco, whatever, like awesome cabinet that the Tempest cabinet is. It is a cool looking cabinet.
And at the time, it would have been fairly expensive for a company to pay an artist to design art on the size of a cabinet.
Yeah, they were all silk screened and everything. Yeah. There was a lot of restrictions on how they could be made, so you had to have somebody that knew how to do the art. And, it's really fast. You're going to get me off track. So there are 2 documented 1981 events in which arcade players experienced negative effects from gaming while living in the Portland area.
Okay. I'm surprised by both the real things so far. So go ahead.
So nationally, there have been 9 instances of seizure activity reported by responding physicians in the U.S. between 1981 and 1984 from playing video games.
Huh.
Yeah. So that's why we have warnings on games now, because they figured out like, kids can have seizures playing this. We should probably put warnings. There are lots of blinking lights, though those were predominantly from home consoles.
Oh, okay.
Not so much arcades.
Yeah.
Government agents did seize and or load up video games in 2 separate occasions in 1981 and 1982 in relation to gambling.
No way.
Yeah. So your whole like pinballs were viewed as gambling. Yeah. So government agents would go in and they would install counters on it and monitor the counters and stuff and be like, somebody's paying out, check the books, and they figured out that arcade owners were paying out players based on score.
No way.
Yeah.
Huh. Was that, you might not know the answer to this, was that so that they would get more people to come in and play the game? Or so that they would like...
Recently, Chatham County had a huge illegal gambling bust, and the gas station near my house that serves really good Indian food got popped.
Really?
Because they had two games that it was like illegal gambling. And basically the way it goes is you play your game and you're like, hey, I got up to whatever you play. And when you want to cash out, if you're cool and they know you go up to the counter and you're like, hey, look, I got that. And they're like, all right, here's that's not going to make for good radio. I am making a money counting gesture. And then they'd pay you out.
That's so wild.
And because they had under whatever the number was to make it like a really bad crime, all they had to do was take the games out.
Wow.
That was it. Made the paper and everything.
I'll be darned.
But yeah, they serve really good Indian food.
Good.
They post what they're serving that day to the Pittsburgh Eats Facebook group daily. So I would recommend checking out the Food Mart in Pittsburgh.
Okay. for all your Vindaloo and gaming needs.
Yeah, it's a good place.
Yeah.
They'll always try to upsell you on what's the milk, like the sweet milk drink?
Lassie.
Yeah, they'll always try to upsell you on that. And I was like, I don't want that. Just give me no. That's funny.
I would have totally fallen for the mango lassi.
Yeah, I never do. But here's where it gets super awesome.
Okay.
So in 1981, there was a government-sponsored experiment on arcade games, specifically to inspect the impact on the habits of players.
Really?
Yeah. It was not in the Pacific Northwest, though. It was in Mesquite, Texas. It was held at an Aladdin's Castle, if anybody remembers that.
Yeah.
The chain of arcades. So Texas was trying to pass an ordinance that citizens under the age of 17 could not operate a coin-op game.
Huh.
Any coin-op game, pinball, arcade, whatever. Kids couldn't play it. Atari, realizing this would severely hurt their bottom line, filed a lawsuit.
Huh.
And the government said, let's have a study. Let's see if it actually is addictive. So thank you, Atari. Because video games are awesome. And I know they were just protecting their bottom line, but that's great that they were like, no.
Yeah.
Like, we can't do that. So, yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. So, anyway, that's Polybius. Several people have tried to, trust me, bro, on the internet that they have the story, including one absolute piece of trash dude who claimed to have worked for us. But his story fell apart really fast.
The logo was drawn in crayon.
The whole thing was crap.
Yeah.
The only thing he was actually doing in Eastern Europe during the time that he said he was there was running one of those schools where they torture kids to change their behavior.
Oh. So he's just an outright bad person.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So we're not even going to name him.
Yeah. No.
But you'll find his story as the trust me, bro, I was there. He was not there. He is a lifetime con artist.
Yeah, it's just running a scam.
Polybius is an amazing urban legend that is a product of a lot of coincidence.
Folklorically, it's fascinating to me in part because every new technology goes through a phase where it is a cautionary tale. And as a recent example, at Nevermore, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, one of the short films was about an Instagram filter that was demonically possessed. And so, like, it made you look really good on Instagram. Yes, it made you look really good on Instagram. They called it something else, but it was obvious, but it wasn't. But the more you used it, the more...
Like, it's like Dorian Gray, the filter?
Kind of. It was basically like the more brimstone burnt you got. So, like, people who were using it had to start using it more because they were starting to look really messed up because they were, like, getting, like, burned and getting horns and their skin was turning red and stuff like that.
People pay good money to look like that.
And I was like, I don't know, horns don't really sound that bad. I don't have anything else up there to look at, so I might as well. But it was just like, it was a great, quick example of that thing of every new technology is supposedly bad. When novels came out, there were like heartfelt essays written in newspapers about which this had also been written, that books were destroying the social order because people would do things like get on the train and read a book. You know,
We can't have people learning.
Yeah, they'd get on the carriage and read a book and not talk to the people
Plebes
around them.
can't be smart.
Right. But the concern was that people would read books instead of talking to the people around them, which is what people say about kids and phones now.
Sure.
So that sort of thing of the new thing that's fun and cool is also definitely going to destroy us. Is such a classic.
What if I told you I have 6 more pages?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. We're not done yet.
Okay.
Buckle up.
All right.
So, you remember the whole thing about kids dying?
Yeah.
Getting murderous? Mm-hmm. What if there was some truth to that?
I would be very surprised.
Well, what if there were some weird coincidences that lined up with that?
I would still be pretty surprised.
Okay. Berserk. Have you ever played the game Berserk?
Yeah, but I don't remember it.
Berserk. If you don't know the game, you can play as 1 player or 2 player. It's like a maze, it's like a top-down maze, and you start as a little green person, and you run around, you can shoot in all these different directions, and there's robots that have a really cool robot voice, like 80s robot voice, and I wrote down some of the things that they say, and I will say them because they are funny. So you're this little stick person, and you run around, you shoot robots, and there is a component of the game meant to drive player activity called Evil Auto. And it's a little smiley face. And it just comes onto the map, and it just starts slowly moving towards you. And you can't kill it. And if it touches you, you die. So it's like the snail, like the whole, like, if you could have $5 million now, but a snail will haunt you for the rest of your life, and if it touches you, you die. Evil Auto is the snail.
Okay.
And it just moves. And once you kill all the robots, Evil Auto speeds up. So it keeps the pace of the game.
Yeah.
So you can't just like camp out in one room in the maze. It keeps you moving from room to room to room as they get harder and harder.
And it keeps people putting quarters in machines.
Yes. And so he's really the arch nemesis of the game. And it's a smiley face, which is super creepy and stressful. And he bounces too.
Okay.
So it's like this is a live one. We can do this. You can censor. It's fucked up.
It is. It's pretty fucked up.
Yeah. There's a modern remaster that came out called Berserk Recharged that I bought, which makes him giant, and it's horrifying because he just comes into the map and you're like, oh God! And like there's no escaping it.
I love that.
To the point where I've played it at home and my oldest will be like, Daddy, this game is weird. And I'm just like, I know! He's shoot it. I'm like, it doesn't do anything!
I love your child being the one with all the sensible responses.
You've met him.
Yeah.
He's a very reasonable kid. So, once the robots are gone, the ball speeds up to match your speed, and it moves you on to the next part of the map. You advance, you accrue points. The game has 65,536 possible rooms.
Jeez.
Yeah. Due to limitations in the random number generation, that means 1,024 maze layouts.
Wow.
It's a pretty cool game.
Yeah.
From a technology standpoint.
That's like a lot.
Yeah. And it had speech synthesis in the early 80s, which was like immensely expensive. It would have cost, it's estimated, $1,000 per word at the time. In 2022, based on inflation, that would be adjusted to, and again, this is from somebody else's research, would be adjusted to $3,550 per word. The English version had a 30-word vocabulary.
Wow.
Yeah, and they would say fun things like "coin detected in pocket," like when it was in it's called attract mode. Like when you're not playing and it shows different things on the screen to try to entice you to play the game. It would talk to you as you walked by, like "coin detected in pocket, intruder alert, intruder alert" is what it would say when Evil Otto would come on screen. The humanoid must not escape. The intruder must not escape. That kind of stuff. It starts insulting you if you run out of a room without fighting a robot. It'll say like, "Chicken, fight like a robot." So, and then again, tons of words. I'm not going to go through all of them, but "kill the chicken" is one of my favorite ones. But again, you'll note that I said the English language version. So there's French, where it was like, "destroy the intruder" would be, and I'm going to botch this, and I don't care. "Détruire l'entrant."
Okay.
Oui. Spanish version. "Destruir al intruso. Solo en Univision Sábado Gigante."
I don't know if it said that.
It did not say anything about Univision, but whatever. But then, you know what else it got translated to?
No.
German.
Oh.
Yeah. So it'd be like, "Vernichte deinen." I took one semester of German in college, and I went there for 2 weeks. My German is very bad.
Do you know the German for "my German is very bad"?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So anyway, it did get translated into German. So there's a correlation to the weird.
It's got a little
German
overlap
company.
there.
And verifiably, people died after playing it.
Oh.
Yeah. Leading to the rumors that Evil Otto also carried a curse.
How did the people die?
What time is it?
8:30.
We have time. Okay. We'll start with the case of Peter Bukowski.
Okay.
On Saturday, April 3rd, 1982, 18-year-old Peter Bukowski, often incorrectly written online as Burkowski, that was not his name, it was Bukowski. He lived in South Holland, Illinois. And he would have woken up to a notably cold morning with a lot of fresh snow.
Okay.
That's important. Checking census records, the Bukowski family home was located on Price Avenue, 2 miles from Friar Tuck's game room, located at 674 River Oaks Drive, Calumet City, Illinois.
Okay.
That's going to come into play. So, according to his parents, he hung around his room playing video games that morning, then left to first go to his girlfriend's house. Then he came back to the family home to get a heavier coat, and then went to a friend's house, and then they went to the arcade.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a total distance of 4 miles. Judging by the events recorded by witnesses and subsequent police reports, it's believed that he arrived at Friar Tuck's at around 8 p.m. Upon arriving, he went straight over to Berserk. The former owner of Friar Tuck's game room was a guy named Tom Blankley, who gave the quote, "Bukowski was on that game every chance he could get, sometimes with a friend, but most of the time he didn't mind playing alone. He loved it. He was a real nice kid, quiet and shy, no problems." So he loved it. He was hooked. Couldn't get enough Berserk.
Right.
And there's a lot of versions about what happens next. So I'm cutting a lot of the fat off of that and going strictly with what I could verify off of Kat Spira's research.
Sure.
Upon arriving to the arcade, he was visibly unwell. And his friends were like, "Hey, man, you don't look so hot." And he was like, "I gotta play Berserk."
Oh, he just looked physically ill?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So he started playing, and he clocked 2 high scores. So he got the top 2 scores.
Yeah.
Took his jacket off, stepped away, and dropped dead.
Oh, the poor kid.
Yeah. The attendant came over and did CPR until the medics got there, but it wasn't enough. The owner blankly gave a quote. "It was awful, a tragedy. My staff did what they could till the ambulance arrived. We never left him and never stopped trying to revive him, but for some reason he couldn't be brought back, and that's something I will never forget."
Oh.
So rumors immediately start spreading in schools, in the arcades, that the owner pulled the game from the floor. The family ordered an autopsy, and here's what they found. So for me, I distinctly remember in high school the story of you never knew what school, but like some school, some kid playing basketball dropped dead.
Yeah, totally.
Whatever that.
That's a flavor of the incident that everybody had in their school.
Right. Well, he had that heart condition that those stories are all tied to. Oh. It's like a pediatric heart condition that usually goes undiagnosed, and it's congenital, and like it doesn't display any signs. And usually, unfortunately, families find out when their kid drops dead after physical exertion.
Yeah.
So the coroner ruled that walking back and forth in the snow all day and exerting himself and then getting super excited while playing Berserk led to a heart attack, essentially, in this young man. But you can see why that would spark rumors that something was up with the game. Because he was 5'10", 18 years old, 172 pounds, no medical conditions.
He just walked 4 miles. He's got to be fine.
Right, like a very physically fit young man.
Yeah.
Except he wasn't. And they just didn't know.
Yeah.
So, very sad. But you can see how that would fuel some rumors that the game was cursed and killed him.
And in moments of tragedy, people start looking for explanations, and sometimes they manufacture them.
Yeah. So then there's the case of Edward Clark Jr.
Okay.
On an unusually warm Monday night, several years later, on March 20th, 1988, Edward Clark Jr., 17, of Lansing, Illinois, found himself at the exact same Friar Tuck's game room.
I was going to say, Illinois?
At the exact same Calumet City arcade, playing the exact same Berserk game.
Okay.
He walks in, he goes to play Berserk, somebody comes around the corner and says, "Hey, I had next." And they start fighting.
Oh, good Lord.
A fight breaks out between Clark's friends and this guy, who was reportedly bad news. So attendants come in, break it up, kick the one kid out, tell Clark, "You got to stay. Like, you're not going anywhere. You got to stay here for 10 minutes. And they tell him after 10 minutes, "All right, we're going to let you leave. You got to go too, because you and your friends were fighting. We can't have you in here. But you have to go that way because we sent the other kid that way."
Right.
Well, they didn't listen. And the kid was waiting in the alley and ran out and stabbed Clark, and he died.
No way.
Yeah.
Stabbed him over I had next on a game of Berserk?
So that's the story. Tom Blankley, owner of Friar Tuck's Game Room, has stuff to say about that too.
I feel like if I were Tom Blankley by this point, I'd be looking at retirement.
Yeah. Or at least selling Berserk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or putting it behind glass or something and charging people a nickel to look at it instead of play it.
That would be the Lawson family murders take.
So he said, "I'm not sure what happened to them prior. Maybe there was some bad blood for a while or whatnot."
Oh, well, thanks for caring, Tom Blankley. Maybe he got all wrung out of him the first time.
Whatever it was, it got out of hand. They beat each other up, and we kicked them out.
Jeez.
So old Tom had seen some things over the course of those 7 years or whatever, and he was just, all right.
Wow, bless Tom's heart.
It gets weirder.
Okay.
So Pedro,
later, the same Berserk machine fell on Tom.
So this is all I'm sharing the verifiable facts, right?
Right.
So the guy who got arrested, the guy who stabbed him and killed him, got arrested.
Okay.
His name was Pedro Roberts, and he was convicted. He spent 2 years in jail, pending trial. He pled guilty at trial. Mm-hmm. He took a plea deal. He was eligible parole after 3 years. Which seems short for stabbing somebody to death, but maybe they do it different in Calumet City. But here's the thing. They sent him to a prison called Marion Prison in Southern Illinois, which back in 1968 was the site of mind control experiments on young prisoners.
No.
Yeah, like
way.
government-sponsored mind control experiments.
So that actually all connects to that.
It all,
angle on it, too.
there's so much connective tissue.
Wow. No wonder people thought this.
Yes. So there's a third one. So there was a small, remember I said in the absence of verifiable sources.
Sure, yeah. Mhm.
So a small independent gaming magazine called Video Ace. They published all of 2 issues in 1981 before going wherever.
That's pretty successful.
And that's a
video game
zine. I don't know
magazines.
that it's I don't think that's a newsletter. I'm pretty sure our zine had more issues than that.
I think in a lot of video game magazines, the first issue was also the we're shutting down issue.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
you buy one cake and save a lot of effort.
I like that.
It's our launch party and our closing party.
Yay! At least you tried. So there's an article in that, and it said that 19-year-old Jeffrey Daly of Virginia had suffered a heart attack on January 12, 1981 after playing Berserk for hours.
Okay.
And he died on the scene. His ending score was allegedly 16,660, mysteriously containing the number of the beast. You know I love a good satanic panic. You know I do. I've done multiple episodes on them.
That's true. It did not make for great radio, but I looked pretty askance at all of that. I just want to know.
So if you look into it, there is a Jeffrey Daly, age 19, interned at Holly Lawn Cemetery in Suffolk County, or Suffolk City, Virginia, that died in 1981. But the dates don't match up and he died in a car accident.
Oh, okay. Maybe. Was he playing Berserk while driving?
That would be quite the accomplishment back then. Also, the score of 16,660 is not considered, even by the standards of the day, to be impressive at all. And if you were playing 4 hours, it's impossible. There's the world champion of Berserk, a guy named Grant Fenneman, explained that Evil Auto moves the player along at such a pace that it's impossible to get that low of a score if you're playing for any kind of extended period. So we can chalk that one up as actual urban legend.
So it's only funny to me because it's not really what happened.
Right.
But it's funny to me to imagine that like the world champion in a video game hears about somebody who died playing it and they sucked.
So all the connective tissue from Berserk and the tragedies around it in my opinion, created the Polybius myth.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that's really cool.
Totally. It's like I said, it's a perfect example of folklore and the way that folklore like develops and emerges. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about that again tomorrow in Literary Destinations. But the fact that people come up with these stories, I always go on about this, but it remains so true to me. It's a demonstration of how important stories like this are to us, socially, culturally, everything.
Because if you just talk about the separate stories tied to Berserk, it's sad.
Yeah.
They're both tragedies. But if you take the really weird parts of them out and then put them into some nonsense German word story, you can share the weird parts without the sad parts.
We talked about it in an episode about a guy named Daniel Keith. But a lot of times folklore is the digestive organ of tragedy. It is what makes it okay again.
Yeah. That's why you're the smart one.
I'm not the smart one.
That's why you're the articulate one.
I'm the one who occasionally gets paid small amounts for words.
There you go. You got some nice words.
Oh, actual footage from when I was 19. No.
So you might be wondering why I have a tiny goat with me.
I love it.
Yeah, it's pretty great. It's because I'll be talking about goats tomorrow.
Nice.
Yeah, so...
Did we use up our time? We did. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we did. I want to give a couple minutes to hang out
totally.
and talk.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of free stuff in the back of the room. Please take whatever you want. So anyway, thanks for being here. Anybody want to talk about video game legends and stuff?
I don't know if you looked it up, but I know for the fact that Tempest got wrapped into this, I wonder, because a lot of operators and bootleg makers used to take the ROMs and ROM hack them and make them run faster, or I wonder if there was ever like a Tempest that had been hacked with and it got sped up where it was making people sick. Because I know they did that with Pac-Man, I know got sped up a lot of times.
Yeah, so there was two thoughts on that. First, it would be hard to do that with Tempest to make it like a kaleidoscope because it was raster images.
Yeah.
So because of the way the monitors displayed, it would all have to be lines. So I don't think you could fully do the kaleidoscope effect the way that popular culture seems to describe it on the internet. But I could definitely see it getting sped up to the point where it felt like that. And as for the ROM hacks, that's actually how we got Miss Pac-Man. It was a bunch of college students, and they had a side business where in their dorm, there was an arcade machine.
Yeah.
It was Missile Command. And they figured out a way to make Super Missile Command. And they were engineering students. And they made little daughter boards that you could solder on. And they started selling them as kits in the backs of magazines to arcade owners. Get more life out of your cabinet that you just paid some ungodly sum for in 1979 or 80 or whatever. And people would buy these kits. And then they got sued by Atari. And then Atari realized that it's not a good look for us to sue a bunch of kids. So what they did instead was they were like, listen, you're going to make stuff for us. We're going to hire you to make stuff for us. And the kids pushed back and said, yeah, that's cool. We don't want to be exclusive, though. And they were like, that's fine. Stop pirating our shit. And the kids were like, fine, we won't mess with Atari. We'll stay out of your turf. So then they went and started messing with Pac-Man. And they made a Pac-Man mod. And then the people that made Pac-Man, Namco, got wind of that and were like, hey, that character that you made to replace Pac-Man with all the rule sets that you changed, change it back to Pac-Man, put a bow on top of it, and we're going to call it Miss Pac-Man, and you're going to make us Miss Pac-Man. So I have a Miss Pac-Man, and if you get an original Miss Pac-Man, all it is, it's the Pac-Man board with a daughter board wired onto it with the modifier.
That is wild.
Yeah.
I just figured it was like somebody somewhere, some MBA had been like, oh, here's a really easy money grab.
No, it was these kids. What's the really smart New England college in like Boston? MIT. Yeah, I think it was MIT kids.
Okay.
I could be getting that part wrong, so don't quote me on that. But it was a bunch of kids that were making ROM hacks, essentially. They were super smart, and they were modding games, and they wound up creating some of the most classic arcade games, which is super cool. Children are the future.
They apparently would have boot almost months after the actual game came out.
Oh yeah, and the industry magazines, like the vendor magazines, if you owned an arcade, you would get these vendor magazines, and they would be filled with advertisements for them. Back page, little classifieds, contact us to find out how to make more money from your cabinet, and stuff like that. So you call them up and be like, yeah, we got this thing you can plug in. Because people were a lot more technically oriented at that time than they are now, and not everything was plug and play. So you had arcade owners that would have a technician, or maybe the owner was the person that knew how to repair boards. So you have to remember that the first arcade games, before microprocessors really became affordable, they were logic boards. So if you look at an original Pong machine, it's a series of boards, and it's all logic. It's not everything on a chip. It's really cool stuff. I could geek out on this for a very long time. There's some really good books that I can recommend if you're interested in the topic.
Oh, that actually reminded me. I saw this guy on TikTok. He repairs really old pinball machines. Mm-hmm. Some of the early ones from like the 40s, 50s, where they were mechanical machines, they were just gambling machines.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm sure.
They were just only for gambling.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, we're at the end of our time, I think.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Unless there's nobody who comes in here after and we just want to hang out, but... Thanks for coming, y'all. Thanks for listening. That was super fun. That was awesome.
Dude, it was one of those ones that is so a little bit of... Nobody's coming in. I'll share this story.
Oh, okay, cool.
So Michael and I used to work together, and we sat in cubicles that were next to each other, and there was a wall, and I would have to kick my chair out and slide and lean and be like, hey! And I'm pretty sure I got on his nerves at first, but I eventually broke him down. But this is the kind of thing that I would have been like away from the desk. Dude, dude, guess what? And you'd be like, dude, I'm on. What? and then
I would happily stop work.
Right, but then 5 minutes in, you'd be like, this is amazing, go on. And then we would spend 45 minutes talking about it.
Yeah.
So this is one of those conversations that, like, it didn't necessarily fit the show completely.
But it's pretty cool.
And it's...
I don't think people are going to complain.
Yeah, so thanks for coming along on the ride with us for this one. I know it wasn't a traditional one, but I thought it was reflective of who we are as people, so it was worth sharing.
If it will make you feel better, I'll drop in a bit at the beginning when it gets released in the fall to say, partly this is of interest because here are all the video game companies that are headquartered in the Carolinas. There are about 1 million of them.
Perfect.
But we have a Polybius cabinet in the game room. It's placed not the ROM, and it's not really a cabinet. It's more of our tribute. So
Awesome.
it's just platform.
Yeah.
When we were playing LSD Simulator right now, just normal girls.
Totally.
Yeah.
But that's awesome, right? I'll be there. But that's what's so cool about it is so you have these very real tragedies that like turn into this cool urban legend that like now have turned into fan projects. And in a weird way, it keeps like the whole chain of stories alive. And I think that's neat.
Absolutely.
Folklore is the digestive organ of whatever he said.
But it really is the thing that we use to connect experiences. All the kids who ever heard that story for the first time at summer camp and then went home and told somebody, you'll never believe what I heard.
Yeah.
That is a form of network building.
Yeah.
That's a form of overlapping experience that people can use to bond.
Yeah.
That I think is really powerful. After we did the Appalachian Folk Magic episode, and we got an email from somebody who was like, here are things that I grew up hearing that I just want to tell somebody because it's a little shocked.
And I felt very vindicated about it. It was like, yes, this is the saint, and this is how you bury him, and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And I'm like, ha-ha! See,
And
my
like
grandma's
somebody
not crazy.
immediately emailed us and was like, when I bought my house, my real estate agent did that.
Yep.
So it's so wild to me. All this stuff is important because it connects us to each other.
Look at us building bridges.
But actually, I don't know. Yes.
Fun thing also with urban legend video games. I'm coming in here, I didn't know where this was going because I never heard.
Oh man, I've never heard of it.
Last week in Nevermore, they screened a film called Live Streamers, where it's like the modern idea of an urban legend or urban video games, where it's a group that plays a video game together and live streams it.
Okay.
And someone comes up with a new game that's, hey, this is a pre-release beta, whatever. And then they later find out it was more like an urban legend video game drama like Dark Web or something. It'd be cool if we played this game, and believing that people would end up dying for real.
That's awesome. So there you go. There's the movie. You said you wanted a movie. There's
All
the
right,
movie.
there we go.
There you go.
Yeah.
You've been listening to Arcane Carolinas. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. For more episodes, behind the scenes information, and links to our social media, check out www.arcanecarolinas.com, where you can also buy the Arcane Carolinas book.
And if you like award-winning horror and science fiction, check out my books at michaelgwilliamsbooks.com. And if you have story suggestions, comments, or questions, email us at arcanecarolinas@gmail.com. And thanks for listening.